Hello, BlissKeepers, and welcome to the Bliss Section Podcast, a space where healing meets honesty and where purpose, wellness, and self discovery take center stage. This is where we hold real conversations that nourish the mind, body, and spirit. I'm your host, Tammy. In each episode, we highlight leaders, creatives, and advocates who are doing meaningful work and being an example of what it means to live, lead, and heal intentionally. In today's episode, we're diving into mental health, safe connection, and nervous system regulation. With an incredible guest joining us is Petrona Joseph, an award winning communication strategist, mental health first aid certified mental health expert and advocate, author, Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, oh my gosh, I'm just so happy to have her. Petrona's work bridges storytelling strategy and mental health education, helping individuals and communities to build emotional, informed, resilient connections. From trauma bonds and attachment to advocacy and regulation, this conversation is about reclaiming safety and self awareness and bliss. Now, let's enter the bliss section. Welcome, Petrona. How are you? Happy Black History Month. I'm so excited to have you on the Bliss Section podcast.
Thank you for having me, Tammy. Thank you so much. And Black History Month too, as well.
Yes. In addition to the outstanding accomplishments on your bio I read, how did your mental health journey start professionally?
I would say it's all started with something I posted on Facebook. When I drove, I would say in 2018, I started having on road anxiety. So a lot of people drive with anxiety, and it's not well known, it's not well documented. And a friend of mine invited me over to her house, and I'm like a vampire because when it starts to get dark, I need to be in my house. I can't be driving unless somebody's
Right.
driving me, unless there's an Uber. And it was such an embarrassing experience that it scarred me, and I had to post on Facebook. So the anxiety to get to her house while driving, I got there late. We were supposed to swim, have fun, be entertained, but my anxiety kept me looking at the clock. I got to get out of here. Oh my gosh, I'm looking. Is the sun going down? So not to
Got
be too
you.
rude, as soon as the sun went down, I'm like, I gotta go. I'm so sorry, Unfortunately, I don't think our friendship really survived that, but I was on the highway, okay, on my way back home, and I started getting anxiety. And when I started getting like panic attacks while driving, my go-to is either to go in the left lane. I know it's weird because the left lane is the fastest lane, but when you're going through anxiety and you're palpitating and your heart's beating and you feel like
Right.
you're going to die on the highway with all of these moving cars, you have to think safety. So what I normally
Absolutely.
do, I reach out to someone and I call somebody and I'll be like, just talk me through this. And I go in the middle lane and I put my hazards on, right? Because I need to let the other cars know, hey, I'm not doing really well in my car, or my car is not doing very well. And I go very slow. That particular night, okay, there was this truck driver behind me and he kept honking and beeping and honking and beeping. And I'm like, but wait a
Hmm.
minute, my hazards are on. That at that point I was in the middle lane, right? Because I realized I'm on the highway. You understand? So I get in the middle lane and I'm giving him like go around, dude, like leave me alone. And by the time the panic attack subsided, I was so scarred that I got home, and being the blogger that I am, I documented my experience. I'm like, hey, next time you see someone in the middle lane with their hazards on, it's very possible that they're doing that because they're trying to save a life. Because if a panic
Yep.
attack is out of control, you feel like your car is swerving, you can't focus, right? And I've had a few of them while on the road. So I was like, you know what? Just consider that the person in front of you or the person with the hazards is having a panic attack. And I got a call from the radio
Absolutely.
station, and the radio station was like, hey, do you want to shut out on the air? I was like, oh, okay, cool. And it just never stopped after that. My phone rang. I wrote a book a few years before that flopped.
That's
And
all right.
And within the book itself, I spoke about mental health, and I always wanted to pick back up the mental health portion of that book. So I was able to finish that book during the holidays as well. Well, not during the holidays, it was during the pandemic. And then I got a nonprofit organization who opened up the doors for me. This nonprofit organization, they catapulted my career in the mental health space where I was able to start giving talks. And then I remember my university reached out, my alumni, and I was like, okay, this is cool. You know, people are actually having these conversations. Because when I started taking antidepressants, nobody wanted to have the conversations. It was so taboo, right? I started taking antidepressants 10 years prior to me actually starting to voice my experiences, right, with mental health. And then I remember when the school called, I was so nervous. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be speaking to students about mental health. And mind you, I'm an experiential mental health advocate, which means that I talk about my experiences, how I
Hmm.
came to, because there's a point where you have to come to the point where you're like, well, this is something that's going on in my life and I want to be better. So I'm going to take responsibility and I'm going to handle it the best way possible with care and with professionals. And you
I
wouldn't
love
be,
it.
but Tammy, it took me 10 years to get to that point. It took me 10 years to get to the point to admitting to myself, and then another 10 years on antidepressants. But needless to say, I was so stressed for this talk at Concordia University that I asked them to bring on two specialists. So they brought on two psychologists from the university itself. And I was so nervous. And of course, I was thinking, oh, nobody's going to want to listen to me talk. Like, really? Are you serious?
No, you are an amazing speaker.
But at the time, I was just starting off, right? So I was like, who's going to want to listen to me? Like, I don't know half of these students. I get a call one day from the university and they're like, Petrona, we're going to have to reschedule your talk. And I was like, oh, okay, I totally get it. Nobody registered, right? They're like, no, contrary. We have 900
Oh
registrants, the
my gosh.
most we've ever had in the history of talks at our university. We
Iconic.
cannot, the system cannot handle all of this. We can only handle maybe 300 students at a time. So they needed more time to figure out the platform. I was floored. I was like, okay, okay, God, something's going on
Wow.
here. And so, yeah, so that's when I realized people want to talk more about it. And for me, the most powerful moment of my mental health journey was one day I got called by the I think it's how do you say it in English? It's the Quebecois embassy. So in Montreal, there's a language office, right? So the French language office wanted to host a mental health conversation, and I was volunteered. And I'm like, oh, my French is not like, oui, je parle français. Of course, I speak French, but I'm like, these people are going to be very like sophisticated and I'm going to get there.
Wow.
But then I sat there with all of these amazing women from France, from, the mountains in like upper France. I don't really know, but the like Provence en X, like all the way and to the south as well, to Cannes. And as I sat there, I was sharing my story and I look around and all of these women are crying. And I was like, but wait a minute, am I making them sad? And I said, well, hold on, let's have a talk. And then each one of them shared their experience. And then that's when I realized that people need platforms, even if it's once a year. Because I remember when I started like having mental health issues, I didn't really have anybody to talk to. Everybody's like, look at your life. You have a fabulous life. You live fantastic. Like, what do you have to be sad about? But needless to say,
Everyone had a story, and it's glad that you resonated with so many people, and people was inspired to share their stories as well. And mental health is very touching. So it's a
Mhm,
natural reaction that people may cry, but feel healed in that process. It's like, relief tears for feeling
mhm,
seen, feeling heard, validated. And I'm so proud of you that you are such a renowned, sought after speaker, sharing your personal experience to help uplift and support other people along this journey as well. And
Thank you.
Petrona, it's 2026. You already had a great year making an impact in 2025. Tell me about initiatives, awards, honors. I know you recently promoted, announced an award. Tell us about that.
That was a surprise. When I got the email, I looked at it twice. I'm like, wait a minute.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was nominated for People's Choice Award in Montreal, and I haven't been in Montreal for 2 years. So that was really surprising, a delightful surprise, because sometimes we think our work goes unnoticed, or we think, our work is not
Right.
appreciated in any space. But I'm sure, Tammy, you do a lot of things behind the scenes, and in as much as I am
Right.
very public, I do a lot of things behind the scenes, right? And
Right.
it just reminds me of a Bible verse where it says, what we do in secret, the Father rewards in public. So when I got the email, I was like, okay, this could only be God, because I didn't
Yes.
really do too much in 2025 or 2024 in Montreal. But it's nice to know that the work that I have done there is recognized.
Amen. Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. Let's get
Thank
back to talking about
you.
the books. Can you tell us the titles of the books? Where can people get in, and what are the books about, and why do you recommend the books?
Okay, so first, stigmatize, destigmatizing mental health, illness. That's the first book. So my first book, really, I think it wasn't as planned. It was just a book, and I was like, again, if one person reads it, great, fantastic, and but I put it together from the perspective of someone experiencing mental health crisis, for the reader to be like, okay, so this is what a well put together person was experiencing this whole time, because the misconception is, if you look fantastic, your makeup is well done, you're living a relatively comfortable life, that you don't have mental health issues. Okay. And I wanted to put an end to that, because I've experienced the highest of highs and gone home, and unmedicated me not able to move for days, right? And when I say for days, I'm talking about like functionally, if I have days off from work, functionally just I can't move. I'm so, I'm in a catatonic state, because I don't want to be alive. I'm sorry to say that. I don't want to be alive. I don't want to do anything. I don't feel engaged. Okay. Even if I have on the outside the most interesting things happening. Um, when I put the book online, I did pre-orders. And again, this is God. And I keep seeing like the pre-orders going up. I'm like, but who's buying this book, And me forcing my friends to buy it, or forcing I, I'm sending the links to my friends. I'm like, okay, this is my book. Buy it. Something. Okay, my friends are
Uh-huh.
gonna buy my book. And I see 100 people. I'm like, I don't even know like 100 of like I don't even have 100 friends like that I can count on my fingers. Then I see 200. Then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Then I see at
Wow.
the end of the day that my book was a number one bestseller on Amazon for mental
Yes.
health. I was like, but wait a minute. And it was a great experience. And I had never done an event myself. So I figured, you know what, let me put together a book launch. And then I realized, hey, there's something there for me. And so with that, though, it was like an entry level book, where I was just showing people, hey, we need to have these conversations. If you feel like this, you could be bipolar. If you feel like that, maybe it's not just depression, maybe it's clinical depression. So I was just exploring a lot of the themes. And then I started writing my upcoming book, my following book, because a lot of people were like, well, we didn't get a lot of information about you. We wanted you to develop some certain parts of your story. And so my mental health issues came from my childhood. And while I touched on that in the first book, I didn't expunge on it. So then I go to the Caribbean for 2 months in the middle of nowhere, Tammy, thinking I'm going to write this other fabulous book. And I remember I was on an island, and I can never forget it. When I gave the person the address, I'm like, okay, so this is the resort I'm going to for a week. They're like, well, that's 2 hours from here. You gotta pass the rainforest. I was like, what are you talking about?
Wow,
I
I
was
love it.
like, Right. So here I am. And I made it a point not to eat because you fast your body, you detox. So here I'm going on this fabulous journey with my dog Maggie because I wanted to be alone. And I'm waking up every morning eating mangoes, the cleanest life, and I'm sitting at the computer and I couldn't write. I couldn't write. So
Mm,
then I came back to North America and I just put that book on the shelf until I had an experience, until I actually met someone with mental health issues. And I have met people with mental health issues, but it's a different level when you meet someone who is bipolar, struggling with other various things. And so that sparked unsafe love. Okay. And Unsafe Love, I wrote it within a week. Okay.
oh, nice.
Because the experience was very raw, it was very real. And I realized that a lot of men and women don't realize that they're in trauma bonds. And when you're dealing with someone who is mentally unstable or unstable, what happens is that if you're codependent, which I am codependent, and I'm in therapy right now for codependency. I started my first therapy session last week because I realized I'm a codependent. Okay. And codependency, along with my depression and anxiety, it's not a good mix. So I need to heal it. So I wrote this book because there's a lot of people in trauma bonds thinking that it's love and it's this. Sometimes it's just really not. Sometimes you're just bonded to, unfortunately, an abuser. Okay. So
Mm,
this book is really putting the language of that experience on paper. Because when you see it on paper, then you're like, oh, wow. So this is not just, I'm deeply in love with this person. No, this person regulates your nervous system. And that draws back to mental health. Because one of the first things I learned, when I started going to therapy 10 years ago for depression and anxiety was learning my nervous system. So sometimes your nervous system goes into activation. Sometimes your nervous system can
absolutely.
be in freeze mode, right? And you can't always rely on other people, right? To talk. You can't call your girlfriends 100 times. Sometimes your therapist, you may have an appointment with your therapist next week. So what are you gonna do? You know what I mean?
Right.
You have to take responsibility for your healing. So once again, how do you deal with this? So I wrote this book based on the trauma bonds, how to undo trauma bonds, identifying trauma bonds, and as well how to regulate your nervous system. Because if I didn't learn how to regulate my nervous system as of late, I'm not sure I would have gotten out of it.
Petrona, it's awesome that you mentioned that you started therapy, but first you acknowledge your codependency and then took the step to go to therapy. And
Oh
I
yeah.
want our listeners to understand that we have to acknowledge that first. And also you mentioned about how, you can't call your friend 24/7 or, if your therapist appointment is a week or, longer out, how do you have those coping strategies in the meantime? So I'm
Right.
glad that you have this book as another tool and resource for people to find coping strategies because we don't have those. We can't pick up the phone and talk to our therapist all day. They have other clients, things,
Right. Yes.
so,
Yes.
and our friends, they have their own lives or jobs or obligations. So, we have to have our own strategies at any given day. Absolutely, for sure. I would love to ask you, in all your accomplishments with your boldness and vulnerability, sharing your own journey in mental health, how do you create your own bliss section? What does that look like for Petrona?
Have to be honest, Tammy. My bliss section is really being in alignment, right? Being in alignment and self-regulation. I grew up dysregulated. And if you grew up dysregulated and codependent and all these other variables, sometimes you could be so dysregulated that you're catatonic. So that's what happens to me. And to get the serotonin levels up, which I think serotonin relates to bliss. I think it's for me being on alignment. So always bringing it back to who am I? What do I like to do? What can I do today to make myself feel good, to feel better, to feel aligned, right? And it's not dependent on other people because when you're codependent, like myself, other people become distractions, right? So you take on the role of other people. But then sometimes God forces us. In my case, God forced me where I had to be in a moment of isolation to really take a look at myself and to really examine, Petrona, who are you and what makes you blissful? You know what I mean? And it's really reconnecting to that.
Yes.
And I think that it's something a lot of people don't consider. Yeah, you can go on vacation and hang out by the beach all day, right? That could be bliss, right?
Right.
Or, you can go to the Caribbean. That's something I used to always do. Just go to the Caribbean, and I'm in another country, I'm in another city, and that creates some bliss. But what about the bliss where you're forced to really look at yourself in the mirror,
Yes.
right? And really realigning with who you are and sitting with yourself and being like, well, I don't need to talk to five people today, or just being in alignment with yourself. Coffee is my bliss.
I love it.
Okay. Coffee, music, really connecting to
Yes.
real high
Hmm.
vibrational music that activates, positive serotonin flow in my body. A really good hot shower that regulates the nervous system as well, right? And
Yes.
just, taking care of my environment, making sure that it's blissful for me mentally. And mind you, Tammy, all of these things that I've listed, they're one on one with me, right? And then talk about, partners and going out for dinners, because these things are great. But at the end of the day, you have to rely on yourself to create your own bliss.
Oh, speak on it, talk on it. I love it because when we think of alignment, we're thinking of community, best friends, spouses, be in alignment with moral values, political values, religious values, things of that nature. But we forget that we have to be aligned with ourselves, mind, body, soul.
Gotta sit with yourself.
Period.
When is the last time you sat with yourself? Just
Oh my
you. No
gosh.
studies, no hubby, no
Oh,
distractions.
oh
Just
my
you.
gosh. Oh my gosh. I often take that time, especially studying psychology. I know that's of importance. I try to not, get caught up in my emotions, but I try to be aware of how
Mhm.
I'm feeling in any given day, week, month, that time, that season, because, and it's taking a look at yourself. Okay, I'm feeling tired today. I'm feeling drained. Okay, what do I need to do to recalibrate? If that's listening to music, if that's writing, if that's meditating, if that's whatever it is in my world. Nature is one of my parts of my bliss section. When you said music, I felt seen because I really feel music is therapy. In addition, I do actually go to cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay.
um Mindfulness meditation practices is something I do often. Sometimes I have to shut out social media, news cycles, things of
Mhm.
that nature, just to think one of myself. I also like to picture look video look of past pictures of
Okay.
myself and my family or accomplishments to just
Mhm.
remind me who I am.
Yes, I love
So
that.
I take that time to when I feel I'm not doing enough, or oh my gosh, I was so tired, I missed 2 days of getting caught up in stuff, and I just need, a break from the world. Then I have to just, pour into myself because I
Mm.
love uplifting people, pouring into people through my words, but I can never forget to uplift myself, be aligned with myself. So thank you for asking
Yes, of
that.
course, of
We all create
course.
our own bliss sections. Now back to you, Petrona. What are you most excited about this year? I know we're still in the beginning of the year, but what are you most excited about?
I'm most excited about the possibility of connecting with students. So, my next step is really doing workshops, mental health workshops within the school system. Because if we could
Beautiful.
reach the parents, right, and the students before I think they go entry level into full adulthood, right, and then realizing, well, hey, in their 30s or early 40s, hey, I have an issue. I should go get help, because getting help at a later stage in life, I think that it creates a certain level of grief, right?
Hmm.
If you could reach a young boy before he becomes an alcoholic, think about that, right? What age do children become alcoholics? And alcoholism is a coping mechanism, right? They your body is in a dysregulated state, you need to numb it because of trauma, right? If we could reach, the young girls before, they take that first hit to regulate themselves. So that's really what my goal would be. And I have this thing where I shouldn't say I want to save young men, but there's a lot of neglected men, young boys in school systems, right? That come from, not so great homes. Yes, there are the
Absolutely.
women. There are the women, but men have a higher suicide rate. They're less likely to get help, and if they're from a multicultural background, they're oftentimes misdiagnosed, right? So we have and men are less likely to go to a psychologist. I think that on a higher scale, women, we're more prone to be like, okay, I think I need help. And we're more open to it, I think, from
Absolutely.
my experience.
I
But
agree.
right? But if we can get these young men engaged in taking responsibility for themselves, because your mental health affects who you marry, your personal relationships, your relationships with your children, your educational choices in the later run, and also it has a long-term effect. So we think that, okay, adverse childhood experiences, they're one thing. Oh, you're going to heal from it? No. You don't you don't heal miraculously from childhood experiences. And then you bring that
Takes
over
time.
into early adulthood, and that's where you see a lot of the disastrous behaviors, I think, from men. You have
Exactly.
men
I
that are,
agree.
yeah.
I agree. And also, men, it seems from my perspective that they hold a lot in. They don't, how women, they'll tell their friends, I love you, or hug and, catch up and check in. It seems more men have to be macho. And even though they care about their friends, they don't show it the way women do. Even with, spousal relation or family, women may feel more comfortable with talking to a friend or family about what they're going through, as a man will keep it hidden in. And I wonder why the suicide rates for men are so high. And I wonder if that's a factor, an underlying factor, that they feel they have to weight a world on their shoulders as friends, spouses, fathers, society pressures of,
Yes.
financial status, titles, things of that nature, that it can tend to be overwhelming. And it's like, we
Mhm.
have to give grace with these men. And it's good that you want to work with them at a young age to show them the steps of how to acknowledge their feelings and have them feel validated and know how to stay away from bad paths that will
Mhm.
lead to, mental health challenges. And also, if it occurs, show them how they can cope.
It's not as easy as it sounds, Tammy. If somebody is embedded in their trauma, believe you me, you start identifying with your trauma, uh, and so it's, if you know what I mean. You ever
Yes,
heard the terminology where you're in a great relationship, the relationship is calm, you're with a stable, secure partner, but if you're from a dysregulated background, or if you have unhealthy attachment to men or women, you're going to create chaos.
absolutely. It's not equally yoked because of
Right.
that background, but it's possible to acknowledge
It is
that the two
possible.
comes from different backgrounds and how to, coexist in a healthy, effective way. Because
Yes.
everyone doesn't come from the same walk of life.
Yes. Yes.
So absolutely it's good to identify those factors, know those differences, because yeah, coming from a unstable background, not being shown love and affection, or coming from abuse and, trauma like that, it definitely can take a toll in life as you get older. Absolutely, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yes.
What advice would you have for anyone who wants to be a mental health advocate?
Hmm. I would say first get the certification, in which I was inspired by you because you got it, Tammy. And I was like,
You.
okay,
So
I
proud of
need,
you.
thank you. So I would definitely say first do that. In terms of advice, it would be hard because I and that's been my life story. Everything that I've entered into have been by accident. You know, I never wanted to be involved in this space. I wanted to be a lawyer, right? However, you can do outreach, get certification. If it's coming from your own experience, you can also document your own experience. You could start writing on threads. I think threads is a good way for engagement. Social media is a good way for starting off. You need your voice to be heard to the right audience. Once you capture your audience, then you can then branch off, and that's how opportunities come. I do believe that according to the Bible, our gifts make room for us, right?
Yes,
So then you're going to see the opportunities appear, because in as much as we think that there are many mental health advocates, not every mental health advocates resonate with everyone. There's some people
absolutely.
I see on some psychologists I see on social media. Some of them I listen to, some of them I don't, because not every one of them resonate with me, you know?
Absolutely. Because everyone has their own journey. There's psychologists who've never been diagnosed with, mental health challenges, and there's some who are. It just,
Exactly.
everyone has their own story. And absolutely, you have to see what resonates with you. There's tons of podcasts out there. There's tons of professionals. There's tons of advocates. I feel the more the merrier, but absolutely, you have to listen to who resonates with you, hands down, for sure.
Exactly. Yes.
Petrona, also, I want our listeners to follow Vision and Purpose Lifestyle Magazine.
Yes,
Petrona
ma'am.
was just featured in that platform as
Thank
well. So, congratulations. That's
thank you.
definitely to hear more of her story, personally and professionally, in this mental health space. And Bliss Keepers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast today. Petrona, thank you so much for sharing your
Thank you for
wisdom.
having me. Thank
You're
you.
welcome, as well as your journey and depth of your work with us. Conversations like this remind us all that healing isn't linear, but it's possible when we create spaces rooted in safety, compassion, and especially understanding. And to our listeners, if this episode is something that you resonated with personally, just sit with it, revisit it, share it with someone who truly may need it. And you can connect with Petrona on various social media handles. I'll make sure that's linked into the podcast show notes. Make sure you support her books and her speaking engagements as well. And if you have any questions or suggestions of this podcast, please email us at the Bliss Section at gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe and rate. It helps us continue to amplify voices that matter. And until we meet again, stay blessed up. Thank you.